All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's Community Hour, a sneak peek at Microsoft and Dell Tech World. We'll get started here in a moment. Just want everybody to get in, get settled. It looks like people are flowing in, so that is fantastic. So just a reminder, Elevate is an independent customer-led user group for Dell Technologies customers on the multi-cloud journey to modernizing their IT infrastructure. We bring members together to share best practices and network with industry experts at virtual and in-person events just like this throughout the year. If you have questions for the speakers today, please put them through the Q&A. We will be watching chat too, but it's much easier to organize in the Q&A. And then without further ado, our host for today is Adam Little, Director of IT Operations at New Belgium Brewing and a director at Elevate User Group's Board of Directors. Sorry, that's a mouthful. Without further ado, Adam, floor is yours.
Hey, thank you so much for that intro. So today we're joined by Kenny and Raghu. You guys mind? I'm gonna pass it over to you guys, and maybe you can do a little quick intro to the group here on what your role is, what your history is, what you're bringing to this. Maybe we'll start with you, Kenny.
Sure. I'm Kenny Lowe. I work in the Cloud Platforms Product Management Group at Dell Technologies. My focus is on all of our multi-cloud portfolio and all the cloud platforms that we deliver, but my heritage, we'll call it, has always been in the Microsoft space. I've spent 20 years in IT, from little help desk bod through sysadmin through architect, and now moved from service providers into Dell about 7 years ago. Initially to support the Azure Stack business, and now the broader multi-cloud business, including Azure Local, which always remains near and dear to my heart. I've been a Microsoft Azure MVP for the last 8 years as well, and Microsoft Regional Director for the last 2 years. What does that mean? Nobody knows. And I guess we'll never find out. Raghu, over to you.
Thanks, Kenny. I am Raghu Venkatraman. I belong to the Edge and Platform team of Microsoft. I work on Azure local product and trying to bring like key features like disconnected operations and stuff right to customers. Previous to my role at Microsoft, I used to work at Dell, where I was a part of the product management team developing Azure Stack, Azure Stack Hub, and stuff like that. So I used to work with Kenny before. So it's I've been engaged with Microsoft and the Azure local product for quite some time, just like Kenny is.
Great stuff. Thanks for that intro, guys. So Kenny, I think we'll probably start with you. I know you were giving us a pretty good rundown at Ignite back in November. I'm certain there's a lot of folks that are on this call that maybe didn't have a chance. I wasn't there, so you want to give us what's the latest and greatest on Azure Local and maybe what's happened since, and just kind of
Yeah. So, uh, first of all, we've done a few of these sessions in the past, and at each one, we kind of start off by talking about what is Azure Local, set the scene there, make the assumption that not everyone even knows what this product is. At each one of these sessions, we kind of make it shorter and shorter and shorter as we see more and more names repeating there. But I'm still going to assume there are some folks here that may not know what Azure Local is, and just we'll maybe do one slide this time on what Azure Local is, and bring folks up to speed there, just to set that baseline, and then take it from there into some interesting updates that we've got for the community as well. I guess the starting point for Azure Local is that it is for Azure customers, and that's the starting point. I think everyone needs to think about this from. It is not an instead of Azure. It's not I don't want to use Azure. It's not I'm avoiding Azure. It is because I am using Azure. I am investing in Azure. I've invested in my team's skill sets in the licensing, in the support of Azure. I understand how to use it and all the supporting features, and I want to extend that on premises and to the edge. I want to take that goodness that I have enjoyed within Microsoft data centers and now extend it elsewhere as well. And I want to have a unified way to operate my management and security across different location boundaries as well. I want to be able to scale applications in a consistent way across different environments, and then try to unify how my data and AI operates across those as well. And there are kind of three different ways I think that we think about this. There is, first of all, Azure regions themselves. So Microsoft has 60 plus Azure regions out there. And I think it's fair to say that the best Azure experience is going to be inside an Azure region. So it's going to have the most services, the largest services, the most up-to-date services, we'll say, and some things which are always going to be unique to those regions there. And that is Azure, and that is within the four walls of Microsoft data centers in specific locations around the world, 60 plus of them there just now. When you need to run a workload outside of Azure, though, and you want to keep that experience, you do have other options there. So option number one on the right-hand side is if you have any existing infrastructure, let's say it's a VMware environment or a Nutanix environment or even AWS. If you have an existing infrastructure there, you can rub a little Azure onto that using Azure Arc. Azure Arc is a set of different services that allow you to either project your existing resources into Azure to bring some Azure management capabilities to them, or to project some Azure services down on premises and run them on top of a Kubernetes environment on-prem. So think things like Azure Data Services, Azure SQL Managed Instances, functions, logic apps, event grids. There's a whole host of things, but start to decouple those from the Azure location, run them in your infrastructure, and still use portal.azure.com to manage those as well. So unifying with the Azure portal there. The key with Azure Arc there is its value extends down to the workload in that scenario there. So it doesn't extend down deeper than that. So if you are running that VMware environment, you can extend that Azure value realistically to the workloads running on top of that. Same with Nutanix, AWS, and so on. But you still manage and run that infrastructure using their existing tools. So use that with vSphere or Prism or whatever you use to manage these environments. It's a split model there, but for existing infrastructure, it does allow you to rub a little Azure onto it and extend that Azure to the edge. When you're looking at new infrastructure, or you're looking at the most deeply integrated Azure experience, though, that's where Azure Local comes in. Azure Local is a traditionally hyper-converged infrastructure that you run on premises, either in your data center, a partner data center, or at the edge, which runs a subset of those Azure services, but critically, instead of just the workloads being Azure Arc integrated, so is the software-defined infrastructure and the physical infrastructure. So everything, disk to cloud and everything in between, is managed in a consistent way, supported in a consistent way, and licensed in a consistent way. So that's where Azure Local fits, when you want that end-to-end Azure experience on premises there. Again, not to say you can bring every Azure service on-prem, there is a subset, but they're the most commonly requested ones: data services, Azure Virtual Desktop, Kubernetes services, and some others there as well. So that is the context of Azure Local, and that is, what we're here to talk about today. And I think, and I'm not going to go on for too long, I know I've already monopolized the time here, and I'm going to let Raghu speak in a minute, but just to say that I think that a lot of the time on these calls, we get super excited and focus on the top level shiny, the roadmap and services and features and what's coming. But I kind of wanted to deviate away from that a bit today and do something that we don't do so often, which is drop down a few layers and look at some of the foundations, the fundamentals, the back end, as it were. And maybe that's traditionally seen as less sexy, but realistically, all these things remain critical to the operation of the platform. And that then in turn dictates how services atop that run as well. So the crux of what we're covering today is around an announcement which is technically already live, but that's officially coming at Dell Tech World. So we're officially announcing externally at Dell Tech World, but the context around that announcement and why it matters is also important. So just generally happy to be able to share that externally first with this group here as well. And I'm going to take a breath and just see, Raghu, is there anything that you want to add on there from a Microsoft perspective?
No, this is great, Kenny, right? And it's probably a good segue to actually kind of exactly what you want to talk about. So keep going.
Okay, perfect. So the next stage in this then is actually looking behind the covers as to the different layers or different mechanisms through Microsoft has enabled OEMs like Dell to deliver Azure Local to our joint customers here, because there are different tiers of Azure Local. Not all Azure Locals are created equal, and there are different tiers that OEMs can exist within to deliver this as a service to their customers. So I'm going to define these, and the context here is important because it's going to be important for when we're talking about the announcements we're making. So the three different tiers are, number one, validated nodes. What is a validated node? Well, you run a set of tests of the Azure local operating system on your hardware there once, and then you support that hardware for 5 years. And that is the entry point for a validated node there. Dell's perspective there, again, sorry, Raghu, Dell's perspective there is that doesn't give the best customer experience. That is not the experience that we're looking to deliver to our customers. So Dell has never delivered validated nodes as an offering, not because we couldn't, because it's very easy and we do all of the other things required for it on top by virtue of the other offerings that we do, but we don't do it because we don't think it's the best outcome there for our customers. And that's just a choice there, not a technical one. It's more of a foundational one to the way we think about how we deliver services to customers. But that's the entry point there. The next tier up is integrated systems, and there are a bunch more value adds that come from an integrated system. So first of all, from a validation perspective, that's done, let's call it 4 times a year. So when Microsoft releases, let's call it a semi-major update, there's a revalidation of that. And so through the entire lifetime of that platform, it is being revalidated in a pretty robust way as well, using the Microsoft Private Cloud Simulator, which does even more under the covers there. It basically simulates about a year's worth of loads test on a platform in the space of a week. And it simulates load and failures and things like that. And if you pass that, then you get a thumbs up, and that's a nice supported platform there. So run about 4 times a year. And then we do things like joint support motions. We do installation of the OS from factory. There's a bunch of other stuff there. But I like to focus on that validation experience there as one of the critical pieces. And then back in, and I can't believe it's already been this long, in September 2023, we launched the first Premier solutions for Azure Local, and it has been that long now. We're about a year and a half on from there now. And the goal of, well, the Premier solutions brought a bunch of new stuff there, but again, from a validation perspective, the key piece there for me is that we moved from validating on a set time period 4 times a year there to doing a continuously validated experience where there is now hardware running in Microsoft engineering and Dell engineering with a CI/CD pipeline common between these, where we're doing continuous validation of updates to make sure you get these as rapidly as possible and tested as robustly as possible. And again, more to it than that, but that's kind of the piece that I want to focus on here from a Premier solution perspective. Now, back when we launched that Premier solution, I actually wrote a blog about the value of Premier solutions there. So I'm not plugging my blog here because I've not written a new blog article for a while yet, but on multicloud.is, there is an article called Azure Stack HCI in 2024. And if we scroll down near the bottom of that, there's a line in there, I think, if I remember, which says, I would argue that the addition of the primary solution category isn't an incremental or optional addition to the catalog. Instead, it's a necessary leap forward in how we do ongoing qualification and ongoing testing. Strong words. I said that this is a required thing. It should be the only thing we do going forward. Primary solutions represent what I would see as the best path forward for customers and what we should focus on. Now, why am I saying that? Because Dell today has 2 different tiers in market just now. We have our AX nodes, which have been integrated systems, and we have our Apex Cloud Platform for Azure as the premier solution here. And I think the difference here is quite stark when you look at the features and functionality you get between these. So on the validated nodes, again, we don't even look at that because it's just one-time validation and then a yucky experience there. Personal opinion. These views do not represent the views of the Microsoft Corporation. And then on the integrated systems side, again, there's more value there, but we're not at the same stage as the premier solutions category there as well. And so if we have these 2 solutions in market and we're saying we believe this is the right path here forward for customers, there's a little bit of, I think it's a little bit hypocritical of us to have that substandard almost experience there for customers. So that leads me to what is the thing we're announcing. What are we doing at Dell Tech World? Super straightforward. We are taking our integrated system and premier solution portfolio, and we are making everything premier solutions. So we've taken that AX portfolio and we just up level it to deliver all the value of the premier solution category. So we do that now on the AX solutions and the Apex Cloud platforms there. So the same continuous validation, the same end-to-end deployment automation there, the same full stack lifecycle management from Azure Update Management moving forward, and a whole bunch more, including external storage support with PowerFlex, which remains a unique value add from Dell as well. So no longer hypocritical, now saying we believe Premier is best, and now Premier is everything. And I know everyone's asking the burning question in their heads. So now that you have moved this integrated system to Premier solution, what's the price increase? Nothing. We've not up-leveled the price as we move from integrated to Premier as well. So there is no change in the pricing of that as well. So just looking to always continue to evolve the portfolio, see where our customers are going, see what we can do to enhance that. And that is what we have done with that AX portfolio there, which I personally am super excited about. Now, what does that mean from an experience perspective? I break it up into two different buckets just now. So on the AX side, at the front end, you get what I'd call a pure Microsoft experience. So Dell isn't building anything additional in the front end there. So you would use all the Microsoft documentation for deployment, but Dell is working vigorously behind the scenes to make sure that everything continues to work as best it possibly can. On the Apex Cloud Platform side, we have effectively brought what was previously our VxRail HCI system software into there to do some more front-end work and automation there. And what is the choice? The choice is not down to me. So I'll put it out there. The end-to-end experience is going to be the same in terms of what we deliver. So that's the outcome there in the experience. So very excited to be able to share that. And again, I'm sorry for monopolizing the time, because I said we tend to get excited about focusing on the new Shiny and things like that, and there I've gone and focused on back-end Shiny there as well. I do have a segue to you, Raghu, which I'm going to do now, because as I went through that blog there, I skimmed over a piece of back-end there as well, which I think it'd be useful to touch on, because when I wrote this blog back in mid-2024, I wrote about how Azure Stack HCI, as it was called at the time, does its release cadence. And I took this image from Microsoft documentation. I wrote a blog around how these different release trains work, how the different cadence works, how there are 4 major updates a year with 2 updates in between there, and so on there. But that's changing, right? And moving forward, it's going to be slightly different. So I wonder if you could spend a little bit of time talking about the what and why of that as well, if that's okay.
Absolutely, Kenny. Right. So the release cadence was structured in 2 different categories. Right. One was around the monthly updates, which had like quality, efficiencies, and other reliability kind of updates, along with the monthly cumulative updates as well. And then you had the quarterly baseline update, which were really feature enhancements, which typically took a longer time for people to actually update. So with this construct, right, the fact of the matter is customers were forced to actually kind of do a frequent baseline update with a pain point of actually not having enough cumulative update capability. And this caused, right, customers to at least have or update to 8 times a year to stay current, right? Of course, right, after we did that, we received a lot of feedback from customers saying that, hey, you know what, this is affecting our business continuity in certain instances. And also, right, it takes a lot of time, right, for our service personnel to actually kind of do this. So we took a hard look at it, and with the latest version, I think it's a 2504 version, we are rebasing that, right, to a semi-annual cadence for those baseline updates, right? So you have the baseline updates that comes every 6 months, and then you also have the monthly updates. So with this, customers have to update only to 4 times a year. So it dramatically reduces from 8 times to 4 times, which has a lot of savings in terms of customer and service personnel time to actually kind of do the updates, as well as the fact that, hey, from a stability point of view, it definitely improves the stability of the environment. So, and I will also echo Kenny's initial kind of move into this, which is more about Premier Solutions. We believe that Premier Solutions is the best of what Azure Local can offer in the market. There is a lot of times that I've thought, right, hey, you know what, there is a support issue out there, and I'm looking at it, and then I think if only the customer had bought Premier Solutions, right, these things would not happen, right? So there is a lot of quality, reliability, and things that we actually kind of catch ahead of time before it gets released to the customer, that's a tremendous value, right? That we actually kind of think it brings to the table.
So
Perfect.
if I'm hearing you guys correctly, is it safe to say, I know a lot of our members are familiar with VxRail. It's kind of a similar validated co-engineered design with Microsoft and the hardware in mind for the releases and testing.
Can I say better? The reason I say that is because we had certain promises around release availability for VxRail for security updates and for major releases. I think it was 10 days and 30 days was what we target with VxRail there today. With the continuously validated update process here, our target is that for any of the cumulative updates, you can apply them within about 4 hours of Microsoft releasing those. So that's better. So they've been fully tested on Dell infrastructure and Microsoft engineering, and you can apply them within 4 hours. And the 4 hours is just a polling period of the software looking for the updates, so it could be faster as well. And then for major rebases, things like that, we're targeting within about 10 days. With that, could be faster. If it's longer, then it's because we found an issue and we're protecting you. So actually good as well if it's longer. So. But from the intent perspective and the goal, yeah, absolutely. There's an awful lot of inspiration drawn from VxRail, and a lot of the team working on this at the Dell side also come from that heritage.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I'd agree. It sounds like it's even better than the way they currently leverage that. Can we talk a little bit more about? I think personally, from a customer side, right? This now. A lot of people, we've all been through this of on-prem to cloud to back on-prem to, we can kind of have all these options. I find myself questioning often with my business, where should this application live, right? Does it require the robust services that are only available in native Azure? If so, then we need to put it there. Can we save some money by running it on-prem because we need locality of those workloads? Can you kind of just talk through what customers you guys have seen in market are adopting it, and then how they're solving unique challenges of needing locality versus the cloud and things like that?
Yeah, I'm going to be quick on this one and then pass over to Raghu, because I just want to echo what you said there. A lot of those words that you use are words that I use all the time. And it's not a case of cloud or on-prem now. It is a case of appropriate application location and finding the right place for a workload and making sure it runs best there. Azure Local is an enabler for that, because you can use the same, support licensing management model in those different locations. But regardless of what platform you're looking at, there's always going to be an element of cloud, always an element of location, and not having a split in mindset between them, but rather thinking, how can I best unify what I do across these, I think is the most important thing here as well. So totally echo that. But Raghu.
Thanks, Kenny. So you're absolutely right. So it's not cloud or it's not on-prem. And in a lot of cases, right, it depends is the right answer. So for Azure Local specifically, right, we are seeing a lot of innovation in terms of customer workloads and where it actually kind of meets the needs of the customer. I would say that it belongs in 3 distinct industry categories. One is around retail, right? The retail scenario is customers want to have the data generated, processed, and also decisions made, right, exactly where the data is generated, right? And in these kind of cases, right, it's really important to actually have something, right, which does not go to the cloud and come back and be able to actually kind of take the appropriate decisions there, right? And then you have these kind of manufacturing scenarios, right, wherein there is a sub-millisecond latency time, right, towards kind of taking the right action for industrial automation and control systems, right? Make sure that you're able to actually kind of have the right kind of fault tolerance as well as the appropriate accuracy, right, in what you're doing there. So for those scenarios as well, right, this is a very good Azure Local fits the need very well, right there. And the third is right around regulated industries, right? Like wherein even though customers want to have the data in the cloud, they cannot have the data nor the control of the data in the cloud. So for these kind of scenarios, right, we definitely see a huge market there. There has been a lot of pent-up demand for the last couple of years towards kind of developing a solution for the regulated industries, which is what we are actually kind of working on right now.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I'm going to tie in one of the questions we got in the Q&A on that because I think it kind of hits on some of that. But Craig was asking about Microsoft's availability of Azure Local with Azure Government yet. I know that's another, there's always the latency right between GovCloud and public cloud, but for me, it seems like this is a great use case of, it could hit a lot of those key customers, right? And I know that it's because it's regulated, it takes more time to test and validate and all those things. But yeah, seems like a good use case. If you guys have any updates there.
So if the specific question is whether the Azure Gov region, which is in Fairfax, when is it going to be made available, right? If that is the question, it's going to be relatively soon. I don't have the exact date, but it's going to be in preview relatively soon right now, right? We are working on it. It's a priority for us to actually deliver that as soon as possible to customers because like you, there are a lot of customers asking for it, right? So we are actively working on it and it should be relatively soon.
That's great. Kenny, I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I thought Raghu brought up a good point about manufacturing customers being a good use case or highly regulated industries. What would you say is not a good fit for Azure Local, something that they should consider native Azure? Is there like a tipping point on, hey, we wouldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z and look at something else for that? Or maybe now in the new option with a Premier Storage and bringing Dell storage, talk about maybe why you would bring Dell storage to that solution.
Well, so the way I would think of Azure Local is as the exception handler. So it's not, do I go to Azure Local or do I go to Azure? It's, I will look to go to Azure because I'm an Azure customer. And when I can't, does Azure Local fit that or does something else? And that's the way to think of it here. So Azure Local is the exception handler to Azure. Azure Local disconnected operations will be the exception handler to Azure Local. And that's the way to think about the location of those workloads there. And the times when to look at Azure Local versus Azure Public is exactly like Raghu said, especially around regulated industries, latency sensitive applications, things like that, things that need to run within your four walls to get the best performance operation. And actually, this isn't one that Microsoft talks about, but a lot of the time there are specific workloads that can be more cost effective running in Azure Local on premises as well, especially ones which are needing high performance storage. You can get high performance storage in a couple of different ways. Within Azure Local itself as a hyperconverged infrastructure, you can get some tremendous high performance workloads running within that as an HCI platform there. And we have multi-million IOPS benchmarks just within a small HCI cluster there. And you're not paying per IO for that. You own your hardware, so you get all that performance to use as you want, when you want. And then if you need to burst larger than that, either in scale or performance, we have PowerFlex for that as well. So again, to use the same terminology, PowerFlex is the exception handler from Storage Spaces Direct. The default should be to use the built-in storage because that's going to be good high performance, but it has its boundaries. And when you break beyond those, PowerFlex is there to address those as well.
Yeah, I think for me, that really hits a point that we run into sometimes with our business of we do have very dynamic workloads that are not related to manufacturing that sometimes they need to spin up, and that that layer between the two of them that can offer a flexibility to say, okay, we can bring that on-prem, save some money when that application's idle. We can put it into Azure whenever it's heavy to dynamically adjust those resources and things like that. Can we talk a little bit? I know we went into updates and the cadence, but can we talk about what do people need to know about how this cluster is serviced from an HCI perspective? Do they need to, I know we were talking about making less iterative updates, right? And more major updates. So with less care and feeding for the platform, but can you guys just talk about how that's handled a little bit more?
I'll talk about the process that you use to actually apply the updates and what that looks like now, because that's one of the improvements that we've made with the AX Premier solution as well. So I'm just going to share my screen again and then bring up good old Azure portal, because that is our home for all things Azure Local here. And it's important for me to keep talking as I do this because it buys me some time while I'm doing all this as well. So if we go into portal.azure.com, and it's not going to work because that's the wrong Edge profile, but luckily Edge profiles make this easy, and I switch to my personal account here. So we go to the Azure portal to have a look at how we would manage the lifecycle management process here. if I go to one of my Azure local clusters, here's one that's sitting at the top. If I want to perform updates of this cluster, I can either go to Azure Update Management and it'll show me the updates available for all my clusters, or I can go to an individual cluster and I can look at the Updates tab here. And within that, I can perform a one-time update of that, or I can go to Azure Update Management from there. Now my cluster just now is up to date, so I've got nothing to apply. But if there was an update, it would show here. I can select it, click one-time update and click go. And that's going to do a bunch of stuff. Number one, it's going to do some pre-checks of the environment. So there are Microsoft built-in pre-checks that validate that the system is ready. So it's going to do checks across all the different disks there, across the storage pools, across all the software-defined infrastructure. You can see there are a huge amount of pre-checks there. And then within what we call the Solution Builder extension, which is the framework that Microsoft makes available for OEMs to build an additional value, we can do additional hardware pre-checks there to ensure that everything else within the hardware environment is working correctly as well. So Microsoft pre-checks, Dell pre-checks within the Solution Builder extension framework there. Once everything comes back healthy, you click go on the updates, and that's going to go ahead and install all the updates there in a non-disruptive way. So it's going to take a node, evacuate the workloads from that, take it out of the cluster, put it into maintenance, perform all of the Dell and Microsoft updates in a single motion there, so no reboots. Then it'll perform a single reboot, bring it back into the cluster, rebalance. Once everything's healthy, move on and iterate through the cluster there, doing all of the updates there. And it's not just Dell and operating system updates. Remember, this is a hybrid cloud infrastructure. There's what's called the Microsoft on-premises cloud stack. There are some integrated services running on top of this. There is the Azure Kubernetes service. There is the Arc Resource Bridge. All of these things get updated, and the entire process is automated through that click there. And Dell integrates directly into that to have all these updates discovered directly within the Azure portal now. So pretty slick.
Yeah, very neat interface for the updates and pretty seamless, right? I think you echoed it earlier, but my team, we leverage Azure heavily, but we've definitely gotten to the point where we're trying to use Azure with Azure Arc as that single pane of glass for all of our workloads, be them VMware, Nutanix, what have you, right? Even in some stuff in AWS. So maybe you guys want to now turn the conversation of what's next for Azure Local. What do you guys want to see put into it? I mean, obviously no spoilers. I know you can't talk about anything NDA, but like, what are the next services that people you see are asking for or they want to have leveraging on a local stack?
I think we should keep that for our next session.
Okay.
I think that in this one, our focus has been on quality, reliability, and stability. From a Dell perspective, that's up-leveling things to that premier solution category. Raghu spoke about how the update cadence is changing based on both customer feedback and ways that we can make this an even better, reliable, stable experience here. And that, I think, is the focus of the session today. And I think it's nice as well to hear how the foundations are just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Because again, it's fun to focus on the shiny on top, but the foundations are what everything's built on. And if that's not strong, everything else collapses. And that's what we're kind of talking about today as the core focus.
Totally get that. Raghu, you have anything to add there?
No, I think Kenny said it perfectly well. It's about strengthening the core of what we try to do, right? Which is making sure the foundation is strong and stronger as we actually kind of take it forward. And also, right, focusing around the quality, the usability, as well as the overall reliability of the product, right? We announced a whole slew of future features, right, during Ignite. And there is a lot of things that we are doing to actually kind of make sure that we get the right kind of customer feedback and incorporate that as a part of the product before we GA it. But while we are doing that, right, the key things that we don't want to lose sight of is around the quality and the reliability part of it, right, which is exactly what we are focusing on right now.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, it's good to hear as Kenny pointed out, right? It's not the shiny new, the highlight reel options, but it's nice to say that we're going to get the basics right? We're going to dial it in to really make it a truly trusted platform for customers. Can you guys maybe highlight, what do you think, what customers are moving from, what platform they're moving from onto this, who should consider it? Maybe some of that of, hey, I'm somewhere in my journey, right, and I've got a hardware refresh or I've got CapEx money, right? And I've definitely felt this as a leader in my organization that everything goes in waves of like it was CapEx everything, send it all to the, or sorry, OpEx everything, send it all to the cloud. To now, I'm actually being asked, hey, are you going to spend all your CapEx, right? So I think this is another area where this can get some customers. I know Kenny, you were saying this is for customers that already have Azure, but is this also a gateway for some folks to try Azure, even though they're maybe not doing anything in the cloud? This is a way to do cloud within their own data center. I don't know, just some thoughts there.
So first off, where are customers coming from? What customers are coming here? Are you going to make me say it? We know the answer.
Well, other than that, right? Is there any
Okay.
other, somebody that's trying to make a cloud migration, right? And that it can tie into AWS, and then it makes it easy to say, hey, I need to pull all of this into one public cloud. There's now the layers to make that easier.
So on the, is it a stepping stone to Azure? I would say it can be, but I would caution that because if you think of it, if you're not currently using Azure and you are going to use this as your next platform, it's not thinking in the way I said earlier, which is it's the exception handler. And you should be looking at what should go into Azure first if that's your strategy there. So yes, it can be. And it could be a stepping stone as a modernization platform in your data center. So you deploy an Azure connected infrastructure, you move your workloads in, you modernize in place, and then migrate them to Azure. That could be a good use case there. But deploying it and thinking that that's going to be your only infrastructure managed by Azure, I don't think that's the right path because it's not going to give you the most value there overall. So technically possible, but not the right or best thing to do. I forget anything else that you asked there.
No. I think it's a good call out, right? That, it can be kind of like a gateway to refactoring some of your applications, right? Of how do I get to containers? How do I do those things, right? That it can be a thought there, right? I think there's definitely some folks that, maybe they leverage a different hyperscaler, but they have Microsoft for all the Microsoft things that they're traditionally known for, right? Where I just think that it's something to think about if you're a customer that's in multiple hyperscalers saying, hey, how do I figure this out? And then, there's the elephant in the room of what do I do with my VMware stuff? And then there's the challenge of, oh, okay, maybe I acquired somebody and they have something I don't know or don't understand. That's a big piece for a lot of my engineering team is they go, oh, it's Azure. We already know Azure because we're already in there. Where I think that there's a lot of customers that, should probably start down that journey and think about what they want to go to, where they want to consolidate into, and if that's an opportunity for them to leverage it and consider it.
Yep. And I guess, I've been in the Microsoft space for 20 plus years at this point, and in the precursors to Azure Local for about 10 years now. So Cloud Platform System, CPS, and then everything that came after I've been working on. And honestly, when I started out, I was looking at these platforms as a server hugger and an anti-cloud mentality. And it was like, oh, here's my option to keep things that I can touch and feel and hug. And that was my reason for starting down this journey here. But I had to evolve my thinking. It's not the right way to do it. It is if you're wanting to use this specific infrastructure, and you have many choices out there, and Dell supports all of them. But if you're an Azure customer, you're looking at this, then Azure Local has to be looked at in the context of wider Azure strategy. They're not just really the on-premises piece there, I guess is what I want to get across.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good way to think about it. And I think that more and more customers are starting to realize it's not an either or, right? It's an and of how am I going to leverage the best services that I need? How am I going to put the right services in the right places? I think that was just a great run through. Just a reminder, if anybody has any questions, we'd love to answer anything you guys have. Raghu, you got anything else to add there on Kenny's last thoughts?
No, I think he covered it really well. The only thing I will leave with, right, is the fact that there has been all these different waves, right, in terms of what influences customer adoption and the tailwinds that we actually kind of see in the industry. Of course, right, we know about some of the tailwinds and in terms of newer innovation engines and emerging technologies with AI that has actually kind of led to newer applications and services that we can actually kind of have, right? It also actually kind of has changed the landscape to have more of the Azure experience, right, on-prem, right? Like in terms of, hey, here's an application that I want to run in Azure, and in certain instances we cannot run it, right, in Azure, right? And customers start cloud native, customers develop app, right, cloud native in Azure, and then, right, when they actually cannot fit their specific use case with it, right, they actually cannot run it on-prem, right? And we are seeing a growing trend, even though we have seen it right before, but we have seen it right in a much more pronounced way with the newer technologies that is emerging right now.
Yeah, it's great. Kenny, I know we were talking about your blog earlier that didn't have any new updates on it. Are there current blogs or news sources that you would recommend for folks that they can take away the link of what's coming, that they can, you know, stay on top of
Yeah.
interesting things?
So off the top of my head, so Lisa Clark, who is in Dell, she has a blog, Lisa at the Edge. She has recently done some blogs and some video interviews of people there, so that's a good one. Sven Langfeld at Microsoft has got a blog that he updates regularly. Thomas Bauer is another one. So there are a good few in the Azure Local community, but your best place for Azure Local news is the Azure Local Slack community. There are thousands of people in there running Azure Local today who are asking and answering questions within there. There are product group people from OEMs, from Microsoft. Anyone and everyone involved in Azure Local is in Azure Local Slack. I think it's just Azure Slack. No, it's Azure. I can't remember what the short URL is anymore. But if you just Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo Azure Local Slack, you'll get it. That's a tremendous source of information.
Okay, sounds great. We did get one more question. Joe asked, can you touch upon any Azure Migrate preview updates? For example, Linux static IP migrations?
I don't have an update on that, right? It's an interesting thing, and we have heard from customers who have expressed something similar in terms of feature capabilities. There are some challenges in which how we can actually kind of release or build that and release that. So I might have to get back to you, right, on like, hey, or at least, right, like, would like to hear your thoughts around what kind of use case are you actually kind of thinking about, and then we can actually kind of see how we can take that forward.
Yep, but Joseph there is a good friend of the community, and thanks again for the nice fleece that I'm currently wearing. So Raghu, let's hook Joseph up with Shri or Kareem or whoever it is that's looking after that now.
Well, sounds good. It doesn't seem like we have much else in the Q&A panel.
There is one hand up. I'm not sure if it's a mistake or intentional.
Okay. I'm looking at the participants panel to see who that might be. Jerry?
Yeah.
All right, maybe not.
Nope. Okay.
Well, thank you guys. Just want to appreciate your time today. We can pass it back for a little bit of outro. And thank you everyone for joining us. Just a reminder, right? A lot of these resources, a lot of these recordings are on our Elevate website. If you guys want to come through and watch ones you missed, it can be fun to go through the back catalog of some of these conversations.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Raghu. I mean, really, really appreciate your time today. Thank you to our sponsors as well, Dell Technologies, Microsoft, and Intel. Don't miss out on joining the community at our annual meeting and reception at Dell Tech World on Tuesday, May 20th from 4 to 6:30 p.m. If you're at Dell Tech World, definitely join us. Would love to see you there. The next webcast will be held on May 6th, so we hope to see you there too. If you can't make anything in person, hope to see you at least virtually. But on behalf of the Elevate User Group Board of Directors, have an awesome day. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
For joining us. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.